what I listen for with like stick control. So if we go to the home tab here, there's a lot of exercises that are all at one height, like the stick control variations or even roll exercises, etc. So if you're doing like any of these stick control variations, whether it's like the normal versions or you're playing like a stick control with filler, or like my favorite one, which is the advanced stick control with filler, when you play through it, your goal is to make it all sound like cut and paste, just the same thing over and over and over and over. So when you're playing this, you don't want to have like on the first line any kind of pulse like this, or like or etc. You want it to all be just exact same thing from one to the next. Now, the amount of consistency that you're trying to aim for is dependent on what kind of instrument you are playing. So if you're playing in a drum line, your goal should be to make it so that it sounds the exact same way as everybody else. But if you're playing on a drum kit, you can get away with some inconsistencies in your sound if you're the only percussionist, the only drummer playing in a group, because you don't have to worry about aligning it with like 7 other people or however many people are on the snare line or tenor line, etc. So when I was working on like concert snare stuff, I wanted it to be consistent sound quality. But when I was working on drum kit stuff, like it's just like, I can get away with some more flexibility with this. So when I'm working on marching snare, I really got to like step things up to the next level. And for me, because I have these perfectionist tendencies and whatnot, and I really like that, snare drum was my favorite instrument to practice because it rewarded that kind of consistency with your playing. When you're playing, one of the things that you want to listen for is this sound. So that hum that is in there, as opposed to this, where it doesn't have that resonance whenever you're playing. So if I am playing a stick control exercise, I want to feel the stick, whether I'm playing soft or loud, vibrate in my hands just a little bit, which is causing that resonance or that humming sound whenever I'm playing through something. So right there was some hum, but if I squeeze the stick a little bit more, have more contact on the stick, less space in the hands, it chokes off that sound. So this has a profound impact on the consistency of your playing as well as the consistency of your sound quality. So if I just simply change the amount of space in my hand while playing just legato strokes, it has a profound impact on the sound quality and the resonance of the stick. But if I also change the velocity from the starting point into the head and back up into it, it can also have a profound impact on the amount of sound quality that you get out of this. So if you play with a slower velocity versus a faster velocity, you'll get significantly more sound out of it the more volume you put into this. So if you are trying to get super perfectionist about playing something like stick control, not only do you want to listen for the resonance in the stick and feel that resonance with that little tickle, that little vibration in your hand, but you also want to consider, am I playing with a different type of velocity on the check pattern, so the pattern where it's just alternating, versus when I'm playing a sticking pattern. So for example, some students, when they play a pattern like right, left, 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 that right hand is gonna have like quicker and more staccato velocity than if you're playing like 4 strokes. Really listen for those things whenever you're working on this. This is just for like single height stuff. But if you're working on stuff like accent taps, or I don't know, like even like these chop exercises, like some shopping sprees, or these different grid variations, there's over 1,000 of them, then you're also really having to consider the differences with 2 different heights if you're doing like a rudimental thing. So with your tap height, this is going to have still that resonance and that vibration in there compared with your accent height. But now you also got to pay attention to, well, how much velocity am I getting for each one of the accents versus how much velocity am I getting for each one of the taps? Again, going back to, depending on what instrument you're playing, if you're playing on drum kit versus if you're playing on like a concert snare versus a marching snare, your level of perfectionism will need to match the number of people that are playing, but you can get super OCD with it. If you want more details on the things that I listen for, like in these live streams, I will narrate out loud, oh, here's what I'm like working on, or here's what I'm practicing, etc. But in the drumming tips, this is where I'll often edit down the responses and the little like teachable moments into shorter videos so you can see, oh, this is something that I could also listen for when I'm practicing any one of the instruments that you might be practicing. Even just like listening to other drumline instructors or other percussion instructors, drum set instructors, whatever, and see, well, what are they listening for? What are they doing? Before I get to the next tip, I just want to say really quickly that you can find literally thousands of hours of free drumming play-alongs and drumming tips in the link at the top of the description, or by going into my home tab of YouTube. For marching band and rudimental, you'll have accents, so a loud note, and taps, so for a soft note. In drum kit, you can go even lower than that and play these really low taps like this, like at a grace note height, and those are called ghost notes. So they're like little interior like filler notes that you're putting in while you're playing like a melody moving around on the drums. And the ghost notes are those little ones right there, as opposed to like a tap height if you're doing rudimental. But if you do a ghost accent in a rudimental context, that's where you stop the stick right before you hit the drum. So you play a grace note low, but you stop the accent from hitting. And so you can do it with flam drags. And those are ghost flam drags. Fun, right? 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a... This is what your right hand plays when you play an invert. This... Okay, so that's why we have this measure right here. We are adding in one hand at a time. In this next measure, you're adding in the very first left hand. So your right hand's not gonna change. And then you finally put them all together, and voila, you have an inverted flam tap. For the last half of the exercises, you're slowly taking away one right hand. So you're playing just what the left hand plays when you're doing inverted flam taps. When you're adding in a note or subtracting a note, the goal should be to not change the hand that's staying the same. So for example, this right hand should stay the same the entire time, no matter what you're doing with your left hand, as you add in that grace note. Or you don't want to all of a sudden add in the accent and go from to like have it mess up your right hand. And same thing when you're getting rid of the right hand, you want to have it so that the left hand is unfazed, unchanged. There's also a cheese invert variation of this. It's the exact same formula, but it has the diddle on here. So when you're playing, you can actually have proper interpretation of those cheese inverts. Now, the general thing that I'd recommend working on is the accent tap exercises. There's a bunch of exercises that you can do that work on your upstrokes or your downstrokes. So for example, all these ones that say upstroke grid variations, great way to work on inverts, because that's the stroke that is likely the difficult part with what you are playing with your inverted flam taps. The inverted pattern, and you're like, cool, it sounds great on the right hand. Cool, it sounds great on the left hand. And then you put them together and they're like... You're like, whoa, what happened? So the double stops, if you play... You should hear a popping sound instead of like a flam or cha sound. Good. Bad. So if you play through these fulcrum control exercises inside of the accent tap playlist, or any of the accent relaxers or tap relaxers, if you do those as double stops, that's another good way to make sure that your hands line up. I will say, when you're practicing your inverts, make sure you're not like like squeezing too hard on those accents. A lot of people, when they're like learning it, they just like overemphasize it. Just pull back, let the weight of the stick do the work for you.